Welcome to Chinese History and Mythology.
Hey friends, welcome back to Chinese History and Mythology. In the winter of 208 AD, a great fire rose into the sky on the northern bank of the Yangtze River at Red Cliffs. That fire burned down Cao Cao's dream of unifying the realm, and it also laid the foundation for the three-way division of power among the three kingdoms. When we tell friends about this period of history, the images that always come to mind are Zhou Yu in his elegant scholar's robe, Zhu Zhiliang borrowing the east wind, and Cao Cao composing poetry with his spear laid across his horse. However, on the eve of this great battle that changed the direction of Chinese history, one woman was written into the call for war. Her name was Zhao Qiao. In the literary narrative of Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Zhu Zhiliang tells Zhou Yu that Cao Cao built the Bronze Sparrow Terrace in order to bring the two cows from the southeast and enjoy their company day and night. This line angers Zhou Yu and strengthens his decision to resist Cao Cao. A woman who had never gone onto the battlefield and had never taken part in any political decision, had her name used like a match to ignite the fuse of an entire war. This detail is extremely thought-provoking. It reveals a deep logic that runs through the entire Three Kingdoms narrative, and even through all of classical Chinese literature. In war epics written by men, women's bodies, beauty, and marriages are always bargaining chips in power struggles, tools for political mobilization, and scapegoats for historical failure. In an age filled with spears, the sound of horses' hooves, and the quiet whispers of strategists, we are used to turning our eyes toward the men standing on city walls or riding on horseback. Cao Cao, Liu Bei, Sun Quan, Zhu Zhiliang, Zhou Yu, Sima Yi. These names hang in the sky of history like stars, shining so brightly that it is almost hard to open our eyes. But if you are willing to shift the camera just a few degrees, you will see that in the shadows of military tents, at banquets arranged for political marriage, and among the chaotic troops at Changban Slope, there were some unarmed women who changed the direction of the Three Kingdoms in another way.
In today's episode, we are going to talk about the important female characters in Romance of the Three Kingdoms. But I do not want to simply tell you a few beauty stories, because that would be too shallow. What I want to do is place these women back into that chaotic age and look at how they were written, used, sacrificed, and misunderstood. At the same time, I also want to talk with you about a bigger question. Why are these women so blurred in history? Why is it that when we think of ancient women, the words that often come to mind are always weak, dependent, and a beauty who brings disaster? How much of these impressions are facts, and how much of them are later prejudice? Today, let's talk about those female characters in Romance of the Three Kingdoms who seem insignificant on the surface, but are actually extremely important. The history we take for granted was, to a large extent, written by men, written for male biographies and centered on men. Women's contributions were either deliberately downplayed, credited to men, or simply turned into disasters. This is not a phenomenon that exists only in China. It is a common problem around the world. For thousands of years, the right to write human history was almost completely held by men. China's 24 histories, from records of the Grand Historian to History of Ming, recorded emperors, generals, ministers, wars, strategies, and court power struggles. Women usually appeared in these texts in only three forms: virtuous wives and good mothers, seductive women who ruined the state, or chaste and loyal women. Their names were often simplified into a woman of such and such family. Their thoughts, talents, and political judgment were completely erased, leaving only labels that connected them to male relatives. This writing tradition created a deeply rooted cultural illusion. Women did not participate in history. They were only observers and attachments of history. Traditional historical writing has long centered on male politicians, rulers, wars, and power struggles, while women's lives and contributions were often ignored. Modern historians and feminist scholars are actively correcting this bias. In the West, the medical world once invented a term called hysteria. In English, it is hysteria, and hysteria is indeed connected to the uterus. Asterisk through the Latin word hystericus, it can be traced back to the Greek word hystera. This name came from an ancient belief that certain illnesses were caused by abnormalities in the female uterus. At that time, people believed that women's biological structure meant they were naturally more likely to lose emotional control and could not think rationally. This diagnosis was used for more than 1,000 years. In the 17th and 18th centuries, some doctors began to explain it through the nervous system and emotions. In the 19th century, doctors such as Charcot studied it as a nervous system disorder and proved that men could also be diagnosed with hysteria.
Modern science has already proven that there is no essential difference between men and women in intelligence, logic, and cognitive ability. So-called emotionality is often a negative label placed on women when society does not allow them to express anger or make demands. But men's anger or violence is often beautified as authority or true temperament. You see, even the matter of emotion has been judged by different standards under gendered power. In the field of science, there is an academic concept called the Matilda effect, which specifically refers to the systematic downplaying or ignoring of women scientists' achievements, or the crediting of those achievements to their male colleagues and husbands. Behind the discovery of the DNA double helix structure, Rosalind Franklin's X-ray diffraction photograph was key evidence, but the Nobel Prize was only awarded to Watson and Crick. Qian-Sheng Wu, who confirmed parity violation, was also excluded from the Nobel Prize. These cases prove that women's contributions did not disappear because they never existed, but because they were systematically deleted in the process of recording, spreading, and judging history. In fact, there are many words like this, words named around women or connected to women, where women's roles and contributions in history were ignored, and the words eventually evolved into terms with negative or sarcastic meanings. For example, spoiler, a single woman who is old enough to be married but isn't, and isn't likely to get married, is sometimes called a spinster. The word has an old-fashioned and dated feel to it, and because of that, it can carry a whiff of impoliteness in certain circumstances. But in previous centuries, spinster was a valuable word that didn't carry any such connotation. When spinster first entered English in the mid-1300s, it referred to a woman who spun thread and yarn. Our earliest use comes from the allegorical poem Piers Plowman, "And my wife spoke to the spinsters for to spin it hit soft, and my wife spoke to the spinners to spin it soft." Mistress. At first, it was the female counterpart of master, meaning a woman with authority as the mistress of a household. Only later did it develop the meaning of a woman in an extramarital affair. Gossip. At first, it referred to godparents, close friends, or people who accompanied women during childbirth. Only later was it connected to the stereotype that women love to spread idle talk. Words like this exist in almost every different kind of language. They began with positive or neutral meanings, but because they were connected to women, they eventually developed negative meanings. The meaning of women in history has also always been divided into labels such as men's attachments or beautiful women who bring disaster. Whenever there was a truly powerful woman in history, some people were almost destined to invent a dirty past for her that did not match the facts. In the story of romance of the Three Kingdoms, besides the generals who fought on the battlefield, the rulers who planned inside their tents, and the strategists who could prepare for danger before it arrived, there were also some female characters who played extremely important roles. However, precisely because men and women have been treated so unfairly in history for so many years, whenever people mention the women of the Three Kingdoms, those women always appear attached to male characters. When people mention Dao Tan, the greatest beauty in Romance of the Three Kingdoms, what they always think of is her unclear relationship with Dong Zhuo and Li Bu. When people think of the two sisters, Da Chao and Xiao Cao, they always mention their emotional connection with Zhou Yu. When people mention Sun Shangshang, they also say that she was nothing more than Sun Quan's beauty trap against Liu Bei. However, when reading history, people ignore one thing. Female characters who can be remembered by history are never remembered only because of their beauty. If the character herself did not have outstanding ability, then no matter how beautiful she was, that beauty would only be a brief flower blooming for a moment. It would never be remembered by history. Today, from another angle, let's talk about the female characters in Romance of the Three Kingdoms and the real roles they played in the story. When we bring this critical perspective into Romance of the Three Kingdoms, one of China's greatest war epics, a long-ignored fact comes to the surface. In this novel, where male military power and political strategy stand at the absolute center, female characters do not appear very often, but almost every time they do appear, they push forward the most important turning points in the plot. Dao Chan's estrangement strategy leads to Dong Zhuo's death. Sun Shangshang's marriage affects the survival of the Wushu alliance. Lady Mi's death creates Zhao Yun's most classic heroic legend. Lady Zhurong's flying knives add another layer of exotic legend to the story of the Southern Campaign. They are written into the story, but their subjectivity, their inner world, and their will as independent individuals are greatly compressed and distorted in the narrative. Today, Let's re-examine these important female characters in Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Let's peel away the layers of labels that literature has placed on them, and look at what position women truly occupied in that real chaotic age, and how their fates reflect the complex relationship between power, war, and human nature. In Chinese popular culture, Dao Chan is listed as one of the four great beauties. She is said to have the beauty of closing the moon, meaning that even the moon would hide behind the clouds when it saw her. But in official history, this person actually does not exist. There is no Dao Chan in records of the Three Kingdoms. She only appears in Romance of the Three Kingdoms and in some earlier folk opera stories. In other words, she is a symbol created by literature. But it was exactly this symbol that became the deadliest chess piece in the Three Kingdoms story. In classical Chinese literature and folk narrative, there is a very widespread and deeply influential idea called a beauty who brings disaster. This idea believes that the fall of a dynasty, the failure of a hero, and the decline of a state are often caused by a beautiful woman. The Shang dynasty fell because of Daji. The Western Zhou fell because of Boci. The An Lushan rebellion of the Tang dynasty was blamed on Yang Yuhuan. This narrative pattern was also perfectly repeated in Romance of the Three Kingdoms, and the most typical example is Dao Chan.
The core of Dao Chan's story is the chain strategy. At the end of the Eastern Han dynasty, Dong Zhuzhuo controlled the government. He deposed the young emperor, installed Emperor Xian, burned Luoyang, moved the capital to Chang'an, and the whole realm was angry but did not dare speak. Situ Wang Yun wanted to get rid of Dong Zhuzhuo, but beside Dong Zhuzhuo stood Lu Bu, unmatched in bravery, Dong Zhuzhou's adopted son and personal bodyguard. As long as Lu Bu was there, no one could get close to Dong Zhuzhuo. Wang Yun saw clearly the weakness that Lu Bu and Dong Zhuzhuo shared, lust, so he pushed out his adopted daughter, Dao Chen. He first promised her to Lu Bu, then offered her to Dong Zhuzhuo, creating a thorn between the adopted father and son that could never be pulled out. Dao Chen moved between them. On one side, she cried to Lu Bu, saying, "I belong to you, but Dong Zhuzhuo forced me away." On the other side, she spoke gently to Dong Zhuzhuo, saying, "Lu Bu has improper intentions toward me, and you must stand up for me." Two men were completely manipulated by the same woman, and in the end, Lu Bu stabbed Dong Zhuzhuo to death with one halberd strike. When you hear this structure, doesn't it sound very much like those ancient Greek legends about Helen and Paris? The question of who a woman belongs to triggers a war or an assassination. Dao Chan is the same. But have we ever thought about whether Dao Chan herself was willing? Did she have any choice? In the novel, she almost has no independent will. Once Wang Yun gives the order, she says, "I am willing to die 10,000 deaths for you," and then willingly walks into the trap. This is a literary imagination of women. She is either a disaster, a saint, or a tool. The only thing she is not is an ordinary person with emotions, desires, fear, and calculations. In real ancient politics, there was a very common tactic called the beauty trap. Women were used as gifts, bait, and tools for creating division. But strangely, when the plan succeeded, the credit belonged to male strategists. When the plan failed, for example, when the woman truly fell in love with the enemy and betrayed her own state, all the blame fell on the woman. This is the typical theory of a beauty who brings disaster. It blames the fall of a dynasty and political failure on one woman. Daji destroyed the Shang dynasty. Baoci destroyed the Zhou dynasty. Yang Yuhuan ruined the Tang dynasty. It is as if the men sitting on the dragon throne were all innocent, as if the final failure of a man who stood at the center of political power and ruled the realm should be blamed on a woman. This is a scapegoat mechanism used by patriarchal society to push away political responsibility. The real causes are often institutional corruption, class conflict, and the ruler's decision-making mistakes. But it is much easier to throw the failure of grand history onto a woman in a weak position than to admit that men themselves were incompetent. Dao Chan's fate is the literary projection of this mechanism. She does indeed push forward Dong Zhuzhou's death in the novel, but the way she does it is precisely by completely turning herself into an object. But if we calmly analyze the power structure of this story, we will find an unsettling truth. Dao Chan has no autonomy in this strategies. She is not the decision-maker. She is the tool. Wang Yun is the designer. Lu Bu and Dong Zhuzhou are the targets being manipulated. Dao Chan is the weapon pushed to the front line. Her beauty is used as a knife, and her body is used as a battlefield. Her deep understanding of righteousness and her willingness to step forward are beautified in the narrative, but in essence, she is an object taken over by the power structure. Because throughout the entire story, have you noticed one detail? Wang Yun never asks her whether she is willing from beginning to end. Lu Bu and Dong Zhuzhou also never treat her as a person with an independent will. In the desire game between two men, she is only an object being passed around. Dao Chan's role seems like an item. Whoever takes her owns her, and whether she herself is willing does not matter at all.
The essence of the beauty who brings disaster theory is an extremely convenient mechanism for shifting political blame. When a dynasty moves toward collapse because of institutional corruption, class conflict, and the ruler's decision-making mistakes, blaming a woman at the very bottom of the power structure is the easiest and safest narrative choice. Daji could not decide King Zhou of Shang's tyranny, but in Investiture of the Gods, she was described as a demon who destroyed an entire dynasty. Yang Yuhuan could not decide Emperor Xuanzong of Tang's neglect of government. Dao Qian could not decide Dong Zhuzhou's cruelty or Lu Bu's repeated betrayal. But under the narrative framework of a beauty who brings disaster, the political failures of these male rulers who held absolute power are cleverly transformed into the personal weakness of being seduced by beauty, while the real institutional crimes are lightly passed over. Blaming the failure of grand history on a weak woman is the oldest cover-up in patriarchal society. In fact, in real history, the person Dao Qian very likely did not exist. Records of the Three Kingdoms only records that Lu Bu had a private relationship with one of Dong Zhuzhou's maidservants, and that Lu Bu therefore felt uneasy. This maidservant had no name and no face. She was only a vague footnote. When Luo Guanzhong wrote Romance of the Three Kingdoms, he enlarged this nameless maidservant into Dao Qian, giving her world-toppling beauty and the great righteousness of saving the state. This kind of literary processing seems to raise the status of women, but in reality it further strengthens two deeply rooted prejudices, that a woman's value lies in beauty, and that women can only participate in history through their bodies. Dao Qian's greatest meaning in the novel is never how beautiful she is, but that she uses her own body to assist a political assassination. Her subjectivity is completely dissolved inside the male narrative of political strategy. Unlike Dao Qian's tool-like function, Da Qiao and Zhao Qiao represent another kind of female fate in Romance of the Three Kingdoms, symbolization. Let's look toward Jiangdong. There were two women there, Da Qiao and Zhao Qiao. They have no independent chapters, no memorable lines, and not even personal names left behind. Qiao is their father's family name, while Da and Zhao only refer to their order as the elder and younger sister. But their presence in the Three Kingdoms story is surprisingly strong. Da Qiao married Sun Si, and Zhao Qiao married Zhou Yu. Sun Si was the founder of Jiangdong's foundation, the Little Conqueror, a young hero. Zhou Yu was the commander of the Battle of Red Cliffs, elegant, talented, and charming, one of the most dazzling young men of that time. These two marriages were written again and again in literature and became the model of heroes matched with beauties. In the novel, they have almost no independent lines, no independent actions, and no independent psychological description. Their existence is entirely used to set off the heroic images of their husbands. Sun Si was young, brave, and swept across Jiangdong, and Da Qiao became the gentle background board in his heroic career. Zhou Yu was elegant and romantic, wearing his scholar's robe and silk scarf, and Zhao Qiao became the graceful footnote in his talented man and beautiful woman narrative. The name, the Two Qiaos of Jiangdong, simplifies two living women into an aesthetic symbol, an ornament belonging to the elegant age of Jiangdong. But if you think about it more carefully, what exactly did Da Qiao and Zhao Qiao do in the story? They almost never actively did anything. Their value is defined through their men. Da Qiao's existence is used to set off Sun Si's heroic spirit. When Sun Si died, he was only 26, and Da Qiao became a widow at a young age. Zhao Qiao's existence is used to set off Zhou Yu's elegance and charm. Even before the Battle of Red Cliffs, Zhu Zhiliang provoked Zhou Yu by saying that Cao Cao had built the Bronze Sparrow Terrace because he wanted to take the two Qiaos into it. Zhou Yu was furious after hearing this, and only then made up his mind to resist Cao Cao. Of course, this section does not exist in official history, but in the novel, Zhao Qiao becomes a trophy desired by Cao Cao, and her ownership becomes a symbol of men fighting over the realm. Deep in the spring of Bronze Sparrow Terrace, the two Qiaos would be locked away. The word locked in this line tells you clearly and accurately the position of women in that age. They could be taken, imprisoned, and displayed, but they had no right to decide who they belonged to. This symbolization reaches its peak in the narrative of the Battle of Red Cliffs. Zhao Qiao's name is used by Zhu Zhiliang as a tool to provoke Zhou Yu. The line, "to bring the two Qiaos from the southeast," turns Zhao Qiao and Da Qiao into Cao Cao's trophy, and reduces Zhou Yu's motive for resisting Cao Cao into protecting his own woman. From the perspective of historical fact, the decision behind the Battle of Red Cliffs involved extremely complex geopolitical judgment, comparison of military strength, and internal factional struggles. Zhou Yu decided to resist Cao Cao because of his precise analysis of military realities. The Cao army was not skilled in naval warfare, had come from far away and was exhausted, and was unstable internally. But in the literary narrative, all of this complex strategic thinking is simplified into a man fighting to protect his wife. This simplification both lowers Zhou Yu's strategic vision as a commander and completely erases Zhao Qiao's value as an independent individual. She does not need to have thoughts. She does not need to have judgment. She only needs to be beautiful and protected, and that is enough to complete her entire function in the narrative. In Western literary tradition, Helen triggered the Trojan War. In Chinese literary tradition, the two Qiaos inspired the resistance against Cao Cao at Red Cliffs. This narrative pattern of a beautiful woman causing a war crosses the boundary between Eastern and Western cultures, and its underlying logic is shockingly similar. It gives the power to start wars, the power to make decisions, and the responsibility for those decisions entirely to men, while women are only the prize being fought over. The female body becomes a metaphorical carrier of male honor and power. Da Chao and Zhao Qiao never say a single weighty line in Romance of the Three Kingdoms and never make an independent decision.
Yet they are forced to take on the narrative function of being war catalysts. This kind of symbolization is more hidden than Diao Chen the tool-like function, and also more complete, because it does not even require a woman to do anything. She only needs to exist, and that is already enough for the narrative to take possession of her. In literary criticism, there is a term called objectification. Da Chao and Shao Chao are typical objects. They are decorative details of the heroic age, an elegant ornament of Jiangdong aristocratic style. Are they important? Yes, they are quite important, because they helped weave the marriage ties between the Sun family group and the powerful Jiangdong clans, making them part of a political alliance. But they themselves always stand at the edge of the story's glow, blurred and unclear. When we read the story today, we often only remember the beautiful name, the two cows of Jiangdong, but almost no one thinks about how Da Chao lived her later years after Sun Si died, guarding her young son, or how Shao Chao lived after Zhou Yu died young, raising her child alone. History did not write it, and the novel was even less interested in writing it. Because in a male-centered narrative, the long life of a woman after her husband's death is not worth spending ink on. Their task was already completed the moment their husbands died.如果 Diao Chen was treated as a weapon, and the two cows were treated as symbols, then unlike the blurred image of Da Chao and Shao Chao, Sun Changshang is much sharper. Sun Changshang's fate in Romance of the Three Kingdoms shows the most complicated position of women inside political marriage. Sun Changshang was Sun Quan's younger sister, and in Romance of the Three Kingdoms, she is often called Lady Sun. Her marriage to Liu Bei was a naked political transaction from beginning to end. After Red Cliffs, Liu Bei borrowed Jingzhou and refused to return it. Zhou Yu came up with a beauty trap: marry Sun Quan's sister to Liu Bei, trick Liu Bei into coming to Jiangdong, then seize the chance to hold him hostage and force him to hand over Jingzhou. In the end, Zhu Zhiliang gave Zhao Yun 3 silk pouches with secret plans, and Liu Bei not only married Sun Changshang, but also escaped back to Jingzhou with her. Zhou Yu sent troops to chase them, but by the time they reached the riverbank, Liu Bei had already boarded the boat. Zhou Yu was so furious that his old wound burst open. Zhou Yu had originally designed an even more sinister plan: use marriage to trap Liu Bei, make Liu Bei drown himself in pleasure, and cause him to lose control over Jingzhou. In this plan, Sun Changshang was not even allowed to know the truth. Her marriage, her feelings, and her body were all just one chess piece on Zhou Yu's board. Sun Changshang in Romance of the Three Kingdoms is fundamentally different from Diao Chen and the two Qiaos. She carries an extremely rare fierce spirit that belongs to women from military families. The novel describes her as having loved martial arts since childhood. The maids serving beside her all carried swords, and her chamber was filled with weapons. When Liu Bei entered her room for the first time, he was even frightened by the flashing blades and weapons all around him, and his face changed dramatically. This detail is very important. It breaks the stereotypical imagination in traditional literature that a woman's chamber must be full of powder, silk, and softness. In Sun Changshang's room, there are no embroidery needles, only swords and blades. Her body does not belong to the object being looked at. Her space is filled with violent symbols that belong to the battlefield. In this story, Sun Changshang's position is extremely delicate. On one side, she is Sun Quan's younger sister. On the other side, she is Liu Bei's wife. On one side, she is Jiangdong's bargaining chip. On the other side, she is the Lady of Shu Han. Which side should she stand on? The novel gives her a fierce personality. Her chamber is filled with spears, swords, halberds, and other weapons, and her attendants are all sword-carrying maids.
When Liu Bei first enters the bridal chamber and sees this scene, he is so frightened that his legs almost go weak. This detail is very interesting. It suggests that Sun Changshang is not a weak woman in the traditional sense. She carries the martial blood of the Sun family of Jiangdong. But in the whole chess game, her fierceness still cannot free her from being controlled by others. She marries Liu Bei not for love, but for her brother's political interests. Later, when the Sun-Liu alliance breaks apart, Sun Quan sends people to bring her back to Jiangdong, and she leaves without hesitation. With that departure, she also completely cuts off her relationship with Liu Bei. Sun Changshang shows a level of subjectivity that goes beyond literary expectations. When Zhou Yu's plan is seen through by Zhu Zhiliang and Liu Bei prepares to escape from Eastern Wu, Sun Changshang chooses to follow Liu Bei. In the narrative, this choice is usually explained as deep affection between husband and wife. But if we analyze it from a political angle, this is actually a political choice Sun Changshang makes between Eastern Wu and Shu Han. She chooses to leave her brother Sun Quan and follow a husband much older than herself back to Jingzhou. This choice means that she completely cuts off her connection with Eastern Wu's core of power and fully binds herself to Liu Bei's political fate. Later, when Sun Quan uses a trick to lure Sun Changshang back to Eastern Wu and tries to use her to threaten Liu Bei, Sun Changshang falls into an extremely painful split of loyalty. She is both Sun Quan's younger sister and Liu Bei's wife. Her body and identity are pulled at the same time by two political groups. In the end, when news arrives that Liu Bei has been badly defeated at the Battle of Yiling and has died, although this news is false, Sun Changshang throws herself into the river and dies. In literature, this ending is presented as dying for love. But its deeper meaning is the despair of a woman in a political marriage who, after losing all usefulness, is abandoned by two power groups at the same time. When Sun Quan needs her, she is a bargaining chip for marriage alliance. When Liu Bei needs her, she is the bond of alliance. When the alliance breaks, her function as a bond disappears, and she becomes a surplus existence with nowhere to belong. Sun Changshang's tragedy is an extreme miniature of women's fate in political marriage. Her fierceness, her martial skill, and her independent will all seem so insignificant before the grand game of politics. In real history, the marriage between Lady Sun and Liu Bei did exist, but her name does not appear separately in records of the Three Kingdoms. It only says that she was Sun Quan's younger sister, that her personality was fierce and strong, and that she had a group of maids standing beside her with knives. Liu Bei both loved and feared her. Zhu Zhiliang also once said, "When our lord was in Gong'an, in the north he feared the strength of Lord Cao, in the east he feared the pressure of Sun Quan, and nearby he feared that Lady Sun might cause trouble right under his elbow." You see, even Zhu Zhiliang treated Lady Sun as an internal unstable factor. Her identity destined her to always be examined through a political lens. No matter how fierce you are, no matter how much you have your own opinions, on the chessboard of power struggle, you are first a bargaining chip, and only then a person. Sun Changshang's tragedy is an extreme miniature of women's fate in political marriage. Her fierceness, her martial skill, and her independent will all seem so insignificant before the grand game of politics. In the Three Kingdoms narrative, there is another kind of female character. Their fate is even more silent, even more restrained, and even more heartbreaking. They are the women who lose everything in war, and in the end, use death to complete the heroic narratives of men. Lady Mi is the most typical example among them. Next, let's talk about two women with extremely tragic fates, Lady Mi and Lady Gan. They were Liu Bei's wife and concubine, and they were also the most typical family sacrifices of that chaotic age. Liu Bei spent his life wandering from place to place. In his early years, he lost battles many times, and every time he lost, he ran away with his brothers, while his wives and children were often left behind. Cao Cao captured his wives before, and Lu Bu also captured his wives. For a warlord, having his wife captured was a humiliation, but it was also a bearable loss. As long as his own life was still there, and his territory was still there, women could be married again. This was the real position of women at that time. They were not even worth as much as a horse or a blade, because horses and blades still had value on the battlefield. But once women lost their usefulness, they became burdens. The Battle of Changban Slope is one of the most tragic war scenes in Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Cao Cao's tiger and leopard cavalry pursued Liu Bei. Liu Bei's army was completely scattered, and his family members fell into the chaos of the troops. Zhao Yun rode alone into the enemy formation to search for Liu Bei's wife and child. He found Lady Mi and Adu. Lady Mi was badly wounded and could not walk. She made a decision. She entrusted Adu to Zhao Yun, and then threw herself into a well and died. Lady Mi's story takes place at Changban Slope. Zhao Yun rushed into the chaotic army to look for Liu Bei's family. After searching for a long time, he found Lady Mi holding Adu hiding behind a broken wall. Zhao Yun quickly got off his horse and asked Lady Mi to get on, but Lady Mi refused. She said the general could not be without his horse, and she could not drag him down. She handed Adu to Zhao Yun, then turned around and threw herself into the well.
Zhao Yun held Adu against his chest, broke through the encirclement, and created the classic legend of Zhao Yun charging in and out 7 times in the entire Three Kingdoms story. At first glance, the design of this story is deeply moving, almost a great mother's love that can shake heaven and earth and make ghosts and gods weep. Think about this scene. A mother, at the moment between life and death, chooses to jump into a well herself and leave the chance to live to her son and the general who came to save them. In the novel, this plot is written in a very heroic way, even with a sense of sacredness. But behind it lies an extremely cruel logic. Lady Mi's life is not counted in this narrative. She jumps into the well in order to complete the stories of Zhao Yun and Liu Bei's son, and in order to let the story continue. If she does not jump, Zhao Yun may not be able to escape with both her and the child. So her sacrifice is written as a sensible sacrifice, a necessary sacrifice. This kind of narrative is actually the literary version of benevolent sexism. In fact, this kind of literary expression of motherly love still exists today. It is as if when female characters face life and death, besides choosing sacrifice, they cannot think of any smarter solution. It is as if only when they sacrifice their own lives can they be labeled great, and only then can they fit the glorious image of a mother. On the surface, the story is praising her nobility and sacrifice, but on a deeper level, it assumes that women's lives can be deducted at any time in a grand narrative as long as their deaths make the men's stories more complete. But here, I am not saying that it is wrong for a mother to die and leave the chance to live to her son. Instead, we should think more deeply about what caused this situation in the first place. It was Liu Bei who abandoned his wife and child. When danger came, he ran first, and only after making sure he was safe did he send someone to rescue his wife and child. Although this is only part of the story, this kind of plot, using the sacrifice of female characters' lives to set off male characters, can be found everywhere throughout history. In literary narrative, Lady Mi's death is given a noble moral meaning. She actively sacrifices herself in order not to drag down Zhao Yun and to preserve Liu Bei's heir. Her death completes Zhao Yun's heroic legend of charging in and out 7 times to save Adu, and it also strengthens the core narrative of loyalty and righteousness in Liu Bei's group. But if we strip away this moral halo and examine the power structure of this scene, we will find an extremely cruel fact. Lady Mi's death is the most extreme expression of war's violence against women. In the age of cold weapons, women's bodies were the most vulnerable. They could not break through on horseback like male generals, and they could not form battle lines and resist like soldiers. When an army collapsed, they could only wait to be captured, humiliated, or killed. To what extent was Lady Mi's active jump into the well truly an active choice, and to what extent was it the only way to preserve dignity in a hopeless situation? Her death preserved Adu, preserved Zhao Yun's heroic image, and preserved Shu Han's line of succession. Lady Gan's fate shares a similar undertone with Lady Mi's, but it was longer and more restrained. Lady Gan was Liu Shan's birth mother, and she followed Liu Bei through the most unstable and wandering years of his life. In Liu Bei's early years, he was defeated many times, and his family members were captured by enemies again and again. In this life, where tomorrow was never guaranteed, Lady Gan carried the full responsibility of raising a young son and holding the family together. She did not have Sicheng's beauty, which could be used to exchange for political benefit. She did not have Sun Shangshang's martial skill, which could be used to protect herself. She was simply a mother in a chaotic age, trying her best to keep her son alive. Her existence is almost completely transparent in the narrative. She does not need lines, she does not need actions, she only needs the function of being Liu Shan's mother, and that completes her entire mission in the Three Kingdoms story. Lady Gan's fate represents the real situation of most ordinary women in the chaos of the Three Kingdoms. They were not chess pieces, not symbols, and not footnotes to heroic legends. They were simply ordinary people struggling with all their strength to survive in the cracks of war. Lady Gan's first important appearance comes after Liu Bei's defeat, when she and Lady Mi fall under Cao Cao's control together. At this moment, her existence directly affects Guan Yu's choice. The reason Guan Yu temporarily submits to Cao Cao is not because he has betrayed Liu Bei, but because he needs to protect the two sisters-in-law. It is also precisely because Lady Gan and Lady Mi are in the Cao camp that Guan Yu declares his position of surrendering to Han, not to Cao, which then leads to the later story of returning the seal and gold and traveling 1,000 li to find his sworn brother. Actually, if we look at it from this point,
Guan Yu is much stronger than Liu Bei, because when facing difficulty, Liu Bei chooses to protect himself first and then think of ways to save his wife. But Guan Yu chooses a delaying strategy. He first personally makes sure the two sisters-in-law are safe and then looks for a way to rescue them. Lady Gan has even fewer scenes in the novel. Her biggest identity label is Liu Bei's wife, Adu's mother. She follows Liu Bei from place to place, is captured by Lu Bu, and is also captured by Cao Cao. Her time in Jingzhou was probably relatively stable, but that stability did not last long. She died of illness before Liu Bei entered Shu. Later, after Liu Bei declared himself emperor, he posthumously honored her as empress. There is actually very little information about the historical Lady Gan. Records of the Three Kingdoms, Book of Shu, biographies of the wives of the two lords, records that Lady Gan was from Pei. When Liu Bei was in Yuzhou and stationed at Xiaopei, he took her as a concubine. Here we need to notice that at first, she was not the principal wife, but held the status of a concubine. However, Liu Bei lost his principal wives many times, so Lady Gan often managed the inner household, meaning that she actually presided over domestic affairs in Liu Bei's household and took on a role similar to that of the principal wife. Later, Lady Gan followed Liu Bei to Jingzhou and gave birth there to Lu Shan, the later lord of Shu Han. During the chaos at Changban Slope, Cao Cao's army caught up with Liu Bei. Liu Bei was in an extremely dangerous situation and was forced to abandon Lady Gan and Lu Shan. Later, with Zhao Yun's protection, mother and son were finally able to escape danger. This episode is recorded in official history, but the official history writes it very briefly. It does not have the long heroic narrative found in Romance of the Three Kingdoms. In her whole life, there is not a single moment that can be called a personal event. Her existence revolves completely around Liu Bei's line of succession. We do not even know what she liked, what kind of personality she had, or what dreams she held. She is like a wisp of smoke drifting across the sky of the Three Kingdoms, leaving behind not even a clear shape. But without her, Lu Shan would not have existed, the later lord of Shu Han would have been someone else, and the entire storyline of the second half of the Three Kingdoms would have changed. In this sense, Lady Gan is also extremely important. It is just that this importance never truly belonged to her herself. In the group portrait of women in Romance of the Three Kingdoms, is there not a single female character who is truly outstanding because of her own ability? Of course not. In Romance of the Three Kingdoms, there is indeed one extremely special figure who completely breaks all the stereotypes about women being weak, dependent, and needing protection. She is Lady Zhurong, the wife of the Nanmen king Meng Huo. She can be considered the only female character in Romance of the Three Kingdoms who is truly taken seriously. Zhurong was originally not a woman's name in Romance of the Three Kingdoms, but a title for a figure in ancient Chinese mythology and early historical tradition. In the common version, Zhurong is the god of fire and is also connected with the south, fire, and legends about the ancestors of the Chu people. Her entrance is very powerful. After Meng Huo is defeated again and again, she comes out from behind the screen and mocks Meng Huo, saying that he is a man but still has no solution. Then she volunteers to go into battle. She rides out on horseback, with 5 flying knives on her back and a long spear in her hand. She captures the Shu generals Zhang Ni and Ma Zhong one after another. She is one of the very few female characters in Romance of the Three Kingdoms who truly goes onto the battlefield and achieves military results as soon as she appears. Zhuge Liang capturing Meng Huo 7 times is one of the most legendary sections in the novel, full of the exotic fantasy of Nanzhong. Lady Zhurong is a female general of the Nanmen. She is skilled with flying knives, can ride and shoot, and personally goes into battle against the Shu army. As soon as she appears, she feels completely refreshing. In the world of Romance of the Three Kingdoms, which is mostly made up of men fighting and women crying, Lady Zhurong is one of the very few women who can take up a weapon and go onto the battlefield. She is not a chess piece in the palace. She is not a burden in the chaos of war. She is a warrior. Lady Zhurong's existence is an extremely important exception in the female narrative of Romance of the Three Kingdoms. She proves that women can possess martial power, can stand on the battlefield, and can use their own strength to fight and conquer. She does not need to influence men through beauty.
She does not need to participate in politics through marriage. She does not need to die in order to complete someone else's heroic narrative. She is simply a warrior, a person with independent fighting ability and military status. In the story of Zhuge Liang's southern campaign, Lady Zhurong is a striking character. She is not a beauty hidden deep in the inner chamber, not a bargaining chip in a political marriage, and not a sacrifice in war. She is a true warrior. The novel describes her as skilled at using flying knives, with 5 flying knives on her back and an 18-foot-long spear in her hand.
She personally arms herself and goes into battle, facing the Shu generals directly. She captures the Shu generals Zhang Ni and Ma Zhong alive, showing fighting power no weaker than that of any male general. But here, another problem appears. One that many readers will not notice. Lady Zhurong has no name. Because the title Lady Zhurong itself is not a complete personal name. In ancient texts and novels, women often do not appear with their personal names. Instead, they are referred to by their family name, their husband's identity, their title, their birth order, their region, or their relationship to someone else. For example, in Romance of the Three Kingdoms, titles like Lady Gan, Lady Mi, Lady Sun, Lady Kai, and Lady Wu Guotai are common, but many of these are not their full private names. Lady Zhurong is the same. More accurately, Zhurong here is like a marker of her clan origin or mythical bloodline, while Lady shows that she is Meng Huo's wife. The novel does not give her a specific private name. In other words, she is not named Zhurong, but is called the lady descended from the Zhurong clan. This also fits the writing style of Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Lu Gaozhong is not necessarily concerned with her personal name. He is concerned with her function in the story. She is the wife of the Nanman king Meng Huo, a descendant of the fire god Zhurong, and a female general who can go into battle. However, even a breakthrough character like Lady Zhurong still cannot escape the fate of being absorbed by the narrative. In the end, she is captured by the Shu army through strategy, and then, along with Meng Huo's 7 captures and 7 releases, submits to Zhu Zhiliang. Her martial power is displayed only to set off the brilliance of Zhu Zhiliang's victory through intelligence. Her existence is incorporated into the civilizing narrative of the Nan man submitting to civilization, becoming a footnote that proves Zhu Zhiliang's benevolent rule. Even so, Lady Zhurong is still the character in Romance of the Three Kingdoms who comes closest to the image of an independent woman. Her flying knives and long spear draw a sharp arc belonging to women in that war-filled world of male force. Strictly speaking, there is no reliable record in official history proving that Lady Zhurong truly existed. The account of Zhu Zhiliang's southern campaign in Records of the Three Kingdoms, Biography of Zhu Zhiliang, is very brief. Its core content is only that in the 3rd year of Jianxing, Zhu Zhiliang led an army south, and by the autumn of that year, he had pacified Nanzhong. The later story of capturing Meng Huo 7 times mainly appears in materials such as Chronicles of Han and Jin and Records of Huaiyang. But the main text of Records of the Three Kingdoms does not describe 7 captures and 7 releases in detail, and it does not mention Lady Zhurong. So on the historical level, we can say this: Meng Huo may have had a historical prototype, but Lady Zhurong has no clear basis in official history. She is more like a fictional character created by Luo Guanzhong based on Nanzhong legends, the myth of the fire god Zhurong, imagination about ethnic frontier regions, and the image of a female warrior. The novel uses descendant of the Zhurong clan to strengthen her mystery and southern color. She has no private name, and what Luo Guanzhong needed was not a complete female biography, but the image of a female general who could represent Nanman fighting power, exotic atmosphere, and legendary color in the story of the southern campaign. After talking about these women, I think you can already feel a common pattern. In Romance of the Three Kingdoms, female characters almost never live for themselves. They are either political tools, like Dao Tan and Sun Shangshang, or trophies and decorations, like Da Chao and Zhao Chao, or sacrifices and tools of reproduction, like Lady Mi and Lady Gan, or exotic spectacles, like Lady Zhurong. Their beauty, fierceness, sacrifice, and bravery are all absorbed into the male-centered narrative logic of fighting for the realm. Their importance is always defined in relation to men, what they can help men accomplish, what emotions they can awaken in men, and what color they can add to men's stories. But their pain, their desires, and their independent choices are rarely taken seriously. Of course, this is not only Luo Guanzhong's problem, and it is not only a Three Kingdoms problem. This is a common illness in the way all human history has been written. In the long history of patriarchal society, history has been the history of men. Emperors, generals, ministers, wars, coups, and institutional reforms, these things were considered important, and they were almost all treated as having nothing to do with women. Women were placed inside the inner quarters and defined as inner people, as if their childbirth, labor, emotional support, and cultural inheritance were not part of history. But modern history and sociology have pointed out more and more clearly that women have always been core participants in history. Since the agricultural revolution, women's gathering and planting formed the basis of human survival. In the textile industry, women were the main force in factories. During the two world wars, women produced weapons in the rear and maintained the operation of society, proving that without them, men could not have fought wars at all. From the modern sociological concept of benevolent sexism, the way Romance of the Three Kingdoms writes women is full of contradictions. On one hand, the novel praises Diao Chen's deep understanding of righteousness, praises Lady Mi's sacrifice for justice, and praises San Shangshang's unchanging loyalty. These praises seem to affirm women, but in reality, they are a delicate form of moral kidnapping. They tell women, your value lies in sacrifice, your virtue lies in completing others, and your highest achievement is giving up everything for a man's career. When a woman is praised as great, it is often because she has given up herself. This kind of benevolent sexism is harder to detect and harder to resist than open belittling, because it wears the clothing of praise, making the oppressed even feel grateful for the oppression. On the other hand, those female characters in the novel who tried to show female strength and independence are eventually taken back into the narrative. Sun Shangshang's fierceness ultimately serves the political narrative of the Wushu alliance. Lady Zhurong's martial power ultimately serves the civilizing narrative of Zhu Zhiliang's southern campaign. Female strength is allowed to be displayed, but only on the condition that it must be placed inside a grand narrative led by men, and must serve the heroic careers of men. Once female strength tries to leave this framework, and tries to have independent goals and will, the narrative punishes it. If Diao Chen refused Wang Yun's arrangement, she would not become a righteous adopted daughter. If Sang Shangxiang refused to follow Liu Bei, she would not become a virtuous wife. Women's free choice is always limited in the narrative to an extremely narrow range of options that serve male interests. For example, many people think that a woman without talent is virtuous has been a Chinese tradition since ancient times. But in fact, throughout Chinese history, there have also been many women who made outstanding contributions and had excellent political thought. The most accurate understanding of the phrase, "a woman without talent is virtuous," is that it is not simply a piece of ancient wisdom, nor can it be completely whitewashed as a woman may have talent but should not show it off. In essence, it was a restrictive saying about women's talent in the patriarchal society of the Ming and Qing periods. The fuller original phrase is usually, "For a man, virtue is talent. For a woman, lack of talent is virtue." A woman without talent is virtuous does not simply mean that the more ignorant a woman is, the better. But it does indeed mean this. A woman's talent must submit to traditional female virtue. Once talent may bring independent awareness, desire for reputation, or behavior that cannot be controlled, then it is better not to have that talent at all. From today's perspective, this phrase clearly carries gender restriction. It reflects ancient society's caution toward women's education and women's expression, not a value suitable for modern society to continue following. The simplest way to summarize it is this. This phrase was not meant to praise women, but to use virtue to suppress women's talent. It required women to place obedience, quietness, chastity, and restraint above talent and self-expression. In fact, this saying mainly became popular among some conservative literati during the Ming and Qing periods. It was a form of discipline strengthened in the later stage of patriarchy in order to tighten ideological control. In fact, this saying mainly became popular among some conservative literati during the Ming and Qing periods. It was a form of discipline strengthened in the later stage of patriarchy in order to tighten ideological control. During the Han, Tang, and Song dynasties, society was far more tolerant of women's talent than it was during the Ming and Qing. Ban Zhao continued the writing of Book of Han. Kai Wenji wrote Poem of Grief and Anger during War and Chaos. Shang Guanwaner controlled literary writing in the Tang court. Li Qingzhao stood shoulder to shoulder with male literary figures in the Song dynasty poetry world. Women's literacy, writing, and participation in cultural activities existed for a very long period of Chinese history. Women's right to education and space for public participation were gradually tightened by later generations. Romance of the Three Kingdoms was written around the late Yuan and early Ming period, and the view of women it reflects already carries clear conservative features of the Ming and Qing periods. Women are confined inside the inner quarters, and their value is simplified into beauty, chastity, and reproduction. This kind of writing is both a reflection of the social reality of that time and a reinforcement and reproduction of that reality. In social psychology, this kind of idea is called a benevolent sexism. On the surface, it is praise and protection, but in essence, it objectifies and infantilizes women, taking away their subjectivity and sense of power. The truth is that women are not weak. On the contrary, in anthropology and sociology, women have shown extremely strong resilience. Whether in survival under harsh environments, endurance in the face of suffering, or the ability to handle multiple pressures in modern society, women have shown enormous inner strength. Today, when we reread Romance of the Three Kingdoms and pull these female characters out from the cracks of the narrative, we are not trying to force a modern feminist label onto them, and we are certainly not trying to deny the literary value of this work. What we need to do is maintain a clear way of reading, to know that what we see is a picture filtered, modified, and even distorted by a male perspective. In that real, chaotic age, there must have been countless Delchans crying inside political marriages, countless Daqiaos and Shaoqiaos supporting their families alone after their husbands died, countless Lady Mis making extreme choices to protect their children in war, and countless Lady Zhurongs taking up weapons in tribal conflicts. They were not written into the books not because they did not exist, but because the people writing the books thought they were not important. However, if we step outside the literary text and look at the real history of the Three Kingdoms, women's faces appear in a much more complex picture. In the real period of the late Han and Three Kingdoms, women were not completely excluded from public life. Cao Cao's wife, Lady Bian, actually took on the important responsibility of managing the rear and stabilizing the internal household when Cao Cao went out on campaigns. Sun Quan's mother, Lady Wu, played a key role in stabilizing the Jiangdong regime during the early career of Sun Si and Sun Quan. Zhu Zhiliang's wife, Huang Yueying, is described in folk legend as a highly talented inventor, and it is said that the design of the wooden ox and flowing horse was connected to her. The contributions of these women in real history were greatly compressed and simplified in official histories, but in local records, note-form fiction, and oral folk tradition, traces of them still remain. Returning to the text of Romance of the Three Kingdoms itself, we need to admit one fact. The greatness of this novel lies in the fact that it uses extremely vivid writing to describe a vast and magnificent world of power struggles. But its worldview inevitably carries the limitations of its own time. In Luo Guanzhong's writing, women are accessories to war, lubricants of politics, and decorations for heroes. Their pain is lightly passed over, their sacrifices are moralized, and their subjectivity is systematically dissolved. This is not only Luo Guanzhong's personal limitation, but also the limitation of the entire classical literary tradition. From a broader perspective, the fate of women in the Three Kingdoms reflects the general situation of women in ancient Chinese society. In times of peace, they were confined to the inner quarters, supporting husbands, educating children, and managing household affairs. In times of war, they became targets of plunder, bargaining chips for exchange, and the price paid through sacrifice. Their names were simplified into a woman of a certain family, and their stories were compressed into a single footnote in the legends of male heroes. Correcting historical misunderstandings is never about creating opposition, but about restoring completeness. Only when women are no longer defined as weak, dependent, and in need of protection, and only when women's value is no longer simplified into beauty, chastity, and sacrifice, can we truly see a complete history, a history with flesh and blood, with laughter and tears. If, in Chinese history, the passage of time and the strengthening and deepening of patriarchy led to the later development of many prejudices and limitations against women, then in Western culture, there is also one female image that has long been misunderstood by almost everyone: the witch. Today, when people mention witches, a very fixed image often appears in their minds: an ugly old woman wearing a black pointed hat, flying through the night sky on a broomstick, followed by a black cat with a large cauldron boiling magical potions inside her house. But from a historical perspective, this image does not have one clear and definite real-life prototype. So do you know how the historical image of the witch actually came into being?
If you enjoyed today's episode, feel free to give the show a like, subscribe, and share it with someone you think would enjoy it too. Thank you for spending this time with me. I will see you in the next episode.
Pengu raised the sky in light, Nuwa healed the broken heart, Fuxi traced the world's design. Every age leaves stories bright. Yaya dynasty shaped bronze, Shang dynasty cast oracle bones. Thou dynasty built Song Dynasty raise, learn